Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Reaction. This is Miscellaneous Myths, IO, but the channel only sarcastic production. The moon, the moon. It is a moon of Jupiter, right? The moon, the myth, the legend, the 3 millionth woman to live through an absolute nightmare just because Zeus couldn't be bothered to keep it in his pants. Oh god, this is a Zeus video. Most videos are Zeus video when it comes to Greek mythology, like that. Zeus bangs somebody, Hera gets pissed off. Yeah. Wait a minute, it makes sense, right? Io is the moon of Jupiter, Jupiter being the, Roman counterpart of Zeus, basically. So, yeah. So it does make sense. Damn, okay. Still had a better life than Callisto, though. Pro tip, if someone is listed on Wikipedia as a lover of Zeus, that does not at all indicate that their relationship was consensual. Yeah, that's most of their relationships. Most of Zeus's relationships. Yeah. Damn, this is gonna be a fun video though. I love it whenever Zeus and Zeus basically bangs somebody without their consent. Hera gets pissed off, and it's just a ridiculous story. So it's gonna be a fun video. I do quite a few Holy Sarcastic production videos already. If you haven't seen them, check out the cards. There's a playlist check out for it. Holy Sarcastic production reaction. I upload lots of videos in 24 hours. Most of the time, 2 videos from this channel a day, I guess. So check out the playlist. You might have missed some of them. Check out the playlist too, like CGP Grey, Interhistorian, Tears Zoo, History, and yeah, let's do this one.
So here's an interesting thing about Ovid. Despite being an incredibly popular poet around the turn of the 0th millennium, Ovid was exiled by Emperor Augustus for somewhat unclear reasons that might have involved criticizing his controversial marriage laws and also banging his daughter. And perhaps because of this, Ovid's work has a very noticeable anti-authoritarian bent to it. It's hard to spot unless you have access to the earlier versions of the myths he retells, but for example, maybe most notoriously, his telling of the story of Perseus and Medusa is wildly different than any prior citation of Medusa's origins. Rather famously, Ovid cites Medusa as a victim of 2 atrocities. First, her assault by Poseidon in the Temple of Athena, and second, her transformation by Athena into a horrifying monster as punishment for being assaulted. This telling is so popular that to this day, people are still arguing over whether Athena did a cool feminist thing by making Medusa immune to being assaulted, or if she did an evil unfeminist thing by victim-blaming her so hard her face turned inside out. This entire argument is dumb because Ovid made it up. Right up until the Metamorphosis was published, Gorgon Medusa was characterized as a bona fide monster from birth till death, one of 3 Gorgon sisters and the daughter of primordial ocean deities Phorcys and Keto, who are also responsible for lovely individuals like Echidna, a giant snake woman whose primary claim to fame in the mythos is spawning off every monster ever by mating with the ancient Greek equivalent of Godzilla. So yeah, Medusa as tragic victim, nice piece of creative writing from Ovid, but really not based on anything. But by providing Medusa with a backstory like...
Yeah, that is so effed up a story that he made up though. I mean, you could interpret it both way, but only interpretation I see is Athena basically punished her in that story. I mean, just saying that she couldn't be hurt, so, Athena made her into a monster. I mean, that's a twisted way of doing things, right? I mean, it's like saying, so the person doesn't feel pain, the guy killed him. I mean, yeah, sure, after he's dead, he's not going to feel anything. But is that really a solution? So turning her into a monster so she never gets hurt or something like that, that's just weird. That's a twisted story, and definitely Athena punished her.
That he transforms the narrative from God's aid heroes in slaying monsters to God's toy with the lives of men, well, usually women actually, and wreak horrifying collateral damage as a consequence. And like I mentioned in the Arachne video, Athena's motives for turning Arachne into a spider are painted by Ovid as being distractingly selfish and jealous, which really doesn't jive with her broader characterization. In short, Ovid has a well-documented habit of playing up the tragedy of powerless mortals being jerked around and abused by an uncaring pantheon full of assholes, even when that doesn't necessarily jive with the source material he has to work with. But there's one flavor of Greek myth where Ovid's hot takes work really, really well, and that's every story where Zeus and Hera inadvertently conspire to ruin some poor woman's life. So today let's talk about Io and how she got stuck in the worst custody battle ever. So our story begins, as so many do, with a beautiful woman minding her own business when Zeus abruptly takes it into his head that she's the one true love of his life. When the woman in question, Io, as it turns out, sees the Lord of the Skies appear before her in a crackling blaze of divine glory and orders her to follow him into the dark spooky woods so they can have sex, she does the smart thing and runs away before he finishes the elevator pitch. Unfortunately for Io, this doesn't do her much good, as Zeus conjures up a discreet cover of storm clouds and chases her down to, yeah. Yep. Real cool of you, Zeus. Dick. But meanwhile, up in Olympus...
Oh god, usually the story goes like, Zeus basically disguised himself as somebody else or something like that. or even sometimes, I guess, I don't know if there is any story where he says that I'm Zeus, but usually, like, he becomes an animal, then disguise himself as somebody else or something like that, or somebody's husband, just to bang the person. But this time, he's just like, I'm Zeus, and I was smart one, like, oh, screw that, I don't care if you're Zeus. And he literally chased her down. Oh, this is really dark, man. The last, one of the last video, I guess yesterday, I talked about how Zeus does not care about humanity at all. That's why he just does whatever the hell he wants. I feel like that's about accurate, because it's just any means necessary. He wants somebody. This is not godlike, is it?
Olympus, Hera notices
I mean, the god, like the good god, like that, the vision everybody has. I mean, obviously in the Greek mythology, god doesn't necessarily mean good, but yeah.
suspicious mass of storm clouds covering up an otherwise innocuous patch of Greece, and decides to check it out. What she finds is a very innocent-looking Zeus and a very unhappy cow. The cow is, unsurprisingly, Io, who Zeus has cunningly transformed in the hopes that Hera wouldn't possibly think he'd be having sex with an animal, because apparently Zeus has the self-awareness of a stump-tailed macaque. Unfortunately for Zeus, Hera knows him a little too well, and upon observing the unhappy bovine, she declares it an absolutely beautiful cow, and kindly requests that Zeus give it to her as a gift. Zeus, recognizing that denying his wife an extremely ordinary cow would look very suspicious, agrees, and Hera leads Io off to her pastures and places her under guard to make sure Zeus doesn't try any funny business. The guard in question is Argus, a giant with 100 eyes and the power to only sleep with 2 of them at a time, letting him be constantly vigilant with the other 98. So Io is well fed, decently cared for, and largely allowed to wander where she wants, but she's still a cow and is unsurprisingly miserable, what with the eating grass and sleeping in the dirt, and being deprived of her very humanity by the selfish machinations of the world's most powerful man-child. She manages to track down her father, the river god.
Wait a second, so is Zeus trying to protect Io here? Because, I mean, Zeus doesn't care if Hera gets pissed off, because he's Zeus, he can't do anything to him. So there's some kind of a thing like that where Hera cannot hurt Zeus. So what, is Zeus scared that Hera might, kill Io or something? But you know what, you turn her into a cow. I mean, do you even care what happens to her? Why are you trying to do all this shit? I mean, you never cared about anybody else in the past, where Hera, viciously killed them.
Inachus, and while she obviously can't talk, she writes out her sorry condition in the dirt, and Inachus freaks out that this poor sad cow is his missing daughter. Argus leads Io away to graze on a distant mountain, but by this point Zeus is feeling really bad about Io's situation and can't help but feel the teensiest bit responsible for her predicament, so he calls on Hermes and asks him to free Io from Argus's watch. So Hermes straps on his winged sandals, grabs his helmet, steals a herd of goats for the road, and pops down to earth disguised as a humble shepherd playing a sweet melody on some panpipes. Argus is intrigued by the instrument and invites the innocuous shepherd over to chat. After regaling him with the long and boring tale of the panpipe's creation, Hermes gradually manages to lull Argus to sleep, and after using a little Caduceus magic to make sure he stays that way, Hermes seals the deal by cutting off Argus's head. But Hera is furious at Io for some reason. So after first immortalizing Argus by placing his eyes on the tail of her peacock, she sends a fury after Io to relentlessly chase her down and torment her.
Alright, what the fuck? First of all, why did he, rip his head off like that? So after turning to reeds to escape Pan, he was like, well, we can still make some music. What? I don't get this. Why Hermes...
lull Argus to sleep, and after using a little Caduceus magic to make sure he stays that way, Hermes seals the deal by cutting off Argus's head.
Why did Hermes kill Argus like that? And Hera sees, then get pissed off at the Io, at the cow. What, she thinks cow, decapitated Argus like that? What the hell? Hera is a real problem. That's what I'm gonna say here.
But Hera is furious at Io for some reason. So after first immortalizing Argus by placing his eyes on the tail of her peacock, she sends a fury after Io to relentlessly chase her down and torment her. Io is chased all over the Mediterranean, during which time she bumps into the captured Prometheus, who raises her spirits slightly by prophesizing that she'll return to her true form and also be the ancestress of the greatest hero of all time, and she also gives birth to a daughter in Thrace named Charoessa, who eventually goes on to have a son with Poseidon, who in turn goes on to found the city of Byzantium. Nifty. Eventually, Io is driven to the banks of the Nile River, where she tips over, and Zeus begs Hera to let Io go and swears on the stakes that he won't try anymore.
Wait a minute, found city of Byzantium? Is she talking about Constantinople? What is it? Okay, I missed that one. Somebody explain that. Is she talking about Constantine here? I don't know.
weird sex stuff with her. Hera relents, recalls the Fury, and Io returns to her true human form. Io gets a lovely and well-earned happily ever after as she marries an Egyptian king, gives birth to a son named Epaphus, is widely worshipped as a god, and never has to deal with Zeus again. Also, Prometheus' prophecy comes true several generations down the line with the birth of Heracles, Io's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson.
Damn.
Worth it. And you see...
What is that? Few percentage of blood in Heracles, basically. Damn. I swear, if I see one more argument about Medusa that involves the phrase "the real story," I'm gonna throw something through it. Yeah, I mean, if Medusa is just that, one of the monster type creature, and just one guy wrote her a story like that, I mean, come on.
Somebody new.
Mythology has no canon, there is no real story, just an endless chain of retellings branching through time and space. I mean, yeah, it's a mythology. Saying a real story kind of feels weird. So, yeah, so some saying the real story of Medusa as a goddess blaming a rape victim is meaningless. I mean, if you're talking about that specific story, if people are talking about, okay, I get it, it's a mythology, but I'm talking about that specific story in which how basically Medusa gets turned like that. Athena, right? Yeah, Athena. So I mean, it is kind of that. She did got screwed there like that. Yeah. We already know why the author painted like that. Yeah, okay, that's true.
That chained up little.
Not to say its version is more or less real than those that came before it, but in his case, we can identify an authorial bias leading to a much more uncharitable adaptation of the myth than previous version. I mean, yeah, in a way, the more original the version is kind of the real version, right? I mean, the oldest version you can find, you can think that as a real version, even though that probably is not the origin of the myth. Maybe origin of the myth is lost, who the first came up with it. But it is old enough, you can think that as the real version, then anybody came way after that.
Still in love with.
Yeah, it seems like he fabricated the whole tragic backstory from scratch, yeah. Always version exists and is a very useful source, but it's not the real story. It's one very angry, jaded man talking out his anger at the emperor on the gods.
So
yeah.
You felt like dropping it.
This is why I will never agree with the death of the author. It's so much more interesting to analyze the work through the author. Yeah.
And just expect me to.
Screw Zeus. Someone should really overthrow that guy. I mean, Zeus' story. I mean, this mythology is so interesting. I mean, it's like it's like great, really great. I don't want to say daily soap, but it's like great daily. It's so much drama here. I've never thought before reacting to this channel that this is how it's gonna be. I mean, Zeus being like this, even I'm pissed off and like, what the hell, Zeus?
To be free.
Carosa means the honor, but I didn't have any evidence that she actually had horns. Horn, not honor. Oh, sorry. Whatever horns are called.
Now
yeah.
I'm saving all my loving.
Well, there you go. Io. Yeah. Another Zeus's basically victim. Io, the Zeus victim, I guess. Alright, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the reaction. I did this link in the description. Check out the cast. Please check out the end cards, and I'll see you next time.